Forget the pre-draft noise, the raw, unedited film reveals a terrifying reality opposing quarterbacks simply aren't ready for. When you isolate Austin Booker's explosive get-off speed and radical ankle flexion off the edge, you aren't looking at a raw, rotational player anymore. You are witnessing a shoulder-dipping pass rush monster whose pursuit metrics completely shut down outside zone runs and screen passes. Teaming up with Montez Sweat, Booker creates an inescapable pressure vacuum that leaves offensive coordinators trapped in an impossible one-on-one dilemma. Watch this tape breakdown to see the exact mechanics proving Chicago's next pass rush god has arrived, and drop your season sack predictions in the comments below. If you scrub through the film in real time, you miss it completely. A split-second burst that looks like a routine pass rush to the untrained eye. But when you hit pause at the exact moment of snap anticipation and zoom in on Austin Booker's lower body, the tape stops lying, and a terrifying reality comes into sharp focus. The modern NFL is defined by tiny margins, where elite edge defenders are no longer judged simply by their college sack totals or raw athletic testing scores, but by the physical biomechanics they display when going toe-to-toe with 300-pound offensive tackles. Forget the pre-draft chatter that labeled him a project and ignore the lazy narratives about his lightweight frame or lack of starting experience in college. When you telestrate Booker's get-off speed and break down the radical ankle flexion he displays around the arc, you realize instantly that you aren't looking at a depth chart rotational player who needs 2 years in an NFL weight room. You are looking at a bona fide superstar in the making, a pass rush phenom possessing the rare physical traits that turn promise into immediate backfield destruction. To understand why Chicago's front office and coaching staff were pounding the table for Booker, you have to throw out conventional box scores and dive straight into the metric tracking graphics. Watch the micro movements during his initial get-off of the edge. The reaction time between the ball leaving the snapper's fingertips and Booker's front foot exploding into the turf is nearly non-existent. Most young edge rushers lose fractions of a second due to false steps or heavy-footed transition mechanics, allowing tackles to establish their set and punch first. Booker, by contrast, operates on a delay-free neural circuit, launching himself forward with a violent low-pad level that puts tackles on their heels before they can even complete their second set step. He fires off the line with such immediate linear acceleration that he forces veteran blockers into an immediate panic set, compelling them to over-commit to the outside path just to keep him from turning the corner cleanly. However, speed alone does not make an elite NFL edge rusher. The league is littered with track stars who bounce harmlessly off the pads of polished offensive tackles. The real magic, the element on film that separates good prospects from game-altering disruptors, occurs at the inflection point, where speed transitions into power, and that is precisely where Booker's biomechanics take over. Pay close attention to his bend angle as he reaches the apex of his rush. As he corners toward the quarterback, his inside ankle flexes to a near impossible angle, staying parallel to the grass, while his core remains tightly locked. This extreme ankle flexion allows him to sink his center of gravity below the tackle's leverage frame without losing an ounce of momentum or slipping on the turf. He doesn't just run around the edge, he carves through it, maintaining top-end velocity while changing directions on a dime, leaving the tackle pushing air as Booker dips beneath their outstretched arms. When you overlay the tracking metrics onto these specific film clips, the numbers tell a story that should terrify every offensive coordinator in the division. His burst velocity through the first 5 yards puts him in elite company, but it is his speed-to-power conversion that makes him truly lethal. Even when a tackle manages to match his initial speed and slide out to meet him, Booker possesses the rare functional strength and length to convert that momentum directly into a bone-rattling bull rush. He drives his hands directly into the chest plate of the blocker, converting his lower body speed into leverage that collapses the pocket inward and drives the edge right back into the quarterback's lap, The tape clearly shows that tackles cannot simply sit on his outside speed, because doing so exposes them to a devastating power counter that resets the line of scrimmage in favor of the defense. What we are witnessing in this opening film study isn't just luck, high energy, or isolated flashes of potential. It is the blueprint of a dominant edge defender whose physical baseline is already tailored for Sundays. The narrative surrounding Booker was that he lacked the polish to contribute right away, yet every frame of this film proves that his foundational mechanics, his get-off, his bend, and his violent transition from speed to power are already operating at a high level. When you examine the tape with a critical eye, you see a player who commands the edge with authority, turning routine pass protection sets into nightmare scenarios for opposing coordinators. This film room analysis is just the opening salvo in understanding his ascension, establishing beyond a shadow of a doubt that Chicago hasn't just drafted another prospect, they have uncovered their next pass rush god. When you slow down the footage to quarter speed, the true art of Austin Booker's edge rushing mastery begins to reveal itself, shifting from pure athleticism into a masterclass of refined technique. The mark of a rookie or fringe defender is reliance on a single trick, usually an outside speed track that NFL tackles quickly figure out and ride harmlessly past the pocket. But as you break down Booker's hand combat frame by frame, you see a sophisticated, calculated counterpuncher who treats every pass rush rep like a high-speed game of chess. His signature toolbox isn't built on rigid, brute force collisions. It is a fluid execution of evasion, timing, and lethal precision designed to turn an offensive tackle's own momentum against them. Pay close attention to how he manipulates the blocker's punch. He deliberately sells the vertical threat, baiting the tackle into overextending their outside arm before executing a lightning-fast hand swipe that completely disconnects the defender's reach. The highlight of his film room reel and the move that has defensive line coaches shaking their heads in disbelief is his phantom-like ghost move. To pull off a ghost move against a physical, long-limbed NFL tackle requires an extraordinary blend of spatial awareness, flexibility, and fearlessness. Watch as Booker exploding off the ball sets up the blocker with a hard outside foot plant, forcing the tackle to shoot a panicked two-handed punch. Right before contact is made, Booker completely dips his inside shoulder down toward the turf, disappearing beneath the tackle's field of vision and shrinking his target zone to almost zero. The tackle's hands strike thin air, causing them to lose their balance and lurch forward, while Booker maintains top-end velocity, smoothly turning the corner directly toward the quarterback's blind side. What makes this shoulder dip so impossible to defend is Booker's ability to stay at full sprint while operating at such an extreme low-leverage angle. Most pass rushers who try to dip their shoulder lose speed or pop upright when they feel the tackle's hip contact, allowing the blocker to recovery slide and push them wide. Booker, however, utilizes a low-profile center of gravity and exceptional core stability to absorb soft contact, skimming past the tackle's hip without forfeiting a fraction of his path angle. He doesn't just bend around the corner, he carves an impossible tight radius around the edge that violates basic physical geometry for an athlete of his length. By reducing his surface area, he effectively neutralizes the tackle's primary weapon, their length and punch, leaving them clutching at ghosts as he closes in on the pocket. Furthermore, Booker's hand violence of the dip creates an added layer of nightmare fuel for opposing pass protectors. Once he drops his shoulder beneath the punch, he immediately uses his inside arm as a lever, ripping through the tackle's armpit to propel himself forward and lock out any chance of a recovery block. This seamless combination, the initial hand swipe, the dramatic shoulder dip, and the violent upper body finish, creates a geometrically impossible angle for offensive tackles to protect against. If a tackle sets wide to take away the ghost move, Booker is quick to flash a lightning-fast inside cross chop, slashing back across the blocker's face to take the shortest route to the quarterback. He doesn't just win reps, he systematically dismantles the mechanics of modern pass protection. As you catalog these technical reps, it becomes clear that Booker's tape breakdown isn't showcasing a developmental player who got lucky on a few broken plays. It is detailing a calculated technician with a lethal pass rush toolbox. His ability to blend fluid movement with violent hand combat forces tackles to play on their heels, second-guessing their set points on every single snap. They cannot guess, they cannot overcommit, and they certainly cannot rely on standard pass pro fundamentals to contain him. The breakdown of his technique proves that his production is completely repeatable, solidifying Booker as a mechanical nightmare capable of collapsing pockets and ruining game plans every single Sunday. If you think Austin Booker is merely a pass rush specialist who only makes his presence felt on third and long dropbacks, the pursuit metrics on tape will completely shift your perspective. To truly evaluate an edge defender's value in the modern NFL, you have to look beyond traditional sack production and analyze how effectively they impact the run game, chase down boundary perimeter plays, and seal off quarterback scrambles. This is where Booker elevates his game from a dangerous edge rusher into an indispensable, game-altering three-down anchor. When you overlay next-gen tracking graphics across his tape, his sideline-to-sideline pursuit speed doesn't just look impressive to the naked eye, it shatters conventional performance baselines for defensive linemen across the entire league. Watch this sequence against the outside zone stretch play to the opposite boundary. At the snap, the offense attempts to flow away from Booker, using a zone blocking scheme to seal the backside and create an expansive lane down the far sideline. On paper, an edge defender aligned on the weak side should be taken completely out of the play. Yet, as the tracking telemetry highlights his closing path, Booker displays an unyielding motor coupled with rare lateral acceleration. Instead of taking a passive trailing angle or getting caught in the trash at the line of scrimmage, he plants his foot, redirecting his momentum across the field with the fluid tracking speed of a off-ball linebacker. He covers 25 yards of lateral field in a heartbeat, closing the distance on the ball carrier before the running back can even chop his feet to cut upfield. This relentless closing speed becomes even more terrifying for opposing offensive coordinators when you analyze how he diagnoses and demolishes perimeter screen passes. Modern offenses rely heavily on quick perimeter screens to slow down aggressive defensive fronts, using offensive linemen as lead blockers in space to outnumber secondary defenders. However, Booker's combination of processing speed and closing velocity turns these play designs into backfield disasters. The micro-tracking graphics tell the story. The moment he detects the tackle releasing into space, Booker doesn't get sucked upfield by the pass set. He instantly redirects his path, triggering downhill with zero hesitation. His elite length and explosive short area quickness allow him to shoot through tiny creases between flying blockers, blowing up the screen receiver behind the line of scrimmage before the play can even develop. Furthermore, his pursuit metrics against mobile, scrambling quarterbacks demonstrate why he is such a nightmare to game plan against. In an era where playmakers routinely extend plays outside the pocket, a defense cannot afford edge rushers who give up on the play once the initial pocket breaks down. When a quarterback breaks contain, Booker transforms into a guided missile. The tracking graphics show his top-end speed actually increasing in secondary pursuit, closing down open field rushing lanes and forcing signal callers to throw the ball away or surrender massive hits along the sideline. He possesses a rare gear that allows him to run down dual-threat quarterbacks from behind, taking away the wide open grass that offensive schemes rely on during broken plays. What these tracking graphics ultimately confirm is that Booker isn't just a high-octane rotational pass rusher. He is a relentless, high-motor, physical specimen who impacts all three downs with relentless energy. His rare combination of play recognition, closing speed, and sideline-to-sideline range shuts down the very concepts modern offenses use to exploit aggressive defenses. He erases outside zone runs, destroys screen plays before they start, and eliminates scrambling lanes with terrifying consistency. The metrics don't lie. Austin Booker's pursuit profile proves he isn't just rushing the passer. He is fundamentally reshaping how opposing teams are forced to call plays against Chicago's defense on every single snap. To truly appreciate the seismic ripple effect Austin Booker creates across an opponent's game plan, you have to put yourself in the helmet of an opposing quarterback standing behind center on Sunday afternoon. For the longest time, offensive coordinators preparing to face Chicago's defense had a relatively straightforward, albeit challenging, equation to solve. Figure out where Pro Bowl edge rusher Montez Sweat was lining up, slide the protection scheme heavily in his direction, and chip him relentlessly with tight ends and running backs. When a defense relies on a single dominant pass rusher, smart offensive play callers can manipulate blocking rules to neutralize that threat, accepting one-on-one matchups on the weak side because the secondary rusher lacks the raw explosiveness or technical arsenal to punish them consistently. But when you overlay the pressure zone graphics and map out the pocket collapse angles when Sweat and Booker are pinning their ears back on opposite edges simultaneously, that cozy offensive strategy completely evaporates into thin air. The graphic heat maps tell a brutal story for signal callers trying to maneuver inside the pocket against this duo. In past schemes, a quarterback facing edge pressure on one side could simply step up into the field or roll out toward the soft side of the defense, buying extra seconds for downfield routes to develop. Now, watch what happens to the pocket geometry when Booker and Sweat launch off the snap in tandem. Booker's explosive get-off and sharp bending radius of the right tackle instantly compress the pocket's back edge, while Sweat's terrifying combination of power and length collapses the left side. The pocket isn't merely pushed back, it shrinks inward from both flanks at once, creating a claustrophobic pressure vacuum that leaves the quarterback with zero room to step up or escape to the perimeter. The visual breakdown demonstrates that the instant the pocket collapses from both sides, quarterback processing time drops exponentially, forcing rushed throws, panic checkdowns, and devastating turnover opportunities. This dual-edge menace presents an insurmountable structural crisis for opposing offensive line coaches during pre-snap protection calls. If the offense chooses to slide the center and guard toward Montez Sweat to ensure he doesn't single-handedly wreck the game, they leave their right tackle marooned on an island in a high-stress one-on-one vacuum against Austin Booker. As we've already seen on tape, isolating any offensive tackle against Booker's deep toolbox of speed-to-power converts, ghost moves, and shoulder dips is absolute tactical suicide. Booker possesses the exact blend of hand violence and lateral agility needed to turn those isolated one-on-one opportunities into immediate quarterback hits and strip sacks. Conversely, if the protection slides toward Booker to account for his rising stardom, Sweat is left with single coverage on the other side, a scenario every defensive line coach in America dreams about. For Chicago's defensive coordinator, this creates the ultimate schematic holy grail: the ability to generate consistent, game-disrupting pass rush pressure while dropping 7 defenders into coverage. When a defense is forced to blitz linebackers or safety packages just to manufacture heat on the quarterback, they naturally leave vulnerable soft spots in secondary coverage that elite passing attacks can exploit. But when Booker and Sweat can collapse the pocket entirely on their own power, the defense can play sound, suffocating coverage behind them, locking down passing lanes, and leaving quarterbacks with nowhere to throw the football while the pocket disintegrates around them. The tape shows opposing quarterbacks taking their drop, looking at their first read, finding covered receivers, and realizing within 2 seconds that they are trapped inside a collapsing fortress with nowhere to run. Ultimately, the tape proves that Booker's emergence isn't just about his individual stat sheet or raw sack numbers. It is about how his presence fundamentally reshapes the arithmetic of modern pass protection. He forces opposing offenses to make a poison pill decision on every dropback, double-team Sweat and let Booker feast in one-on-one space, or respect Booker and watch Sweat demolish the pocket from the blind side. That psychological and schematic strain disrupts entire game plans before the ball is even snapped, turning opposing quarterbacks into hesitant, uncomfortable targets. Austin Booker isn't just winning his own individual reps, he is making the entire Chicago defense exponentially more dangerous, transforming the front four into a lethal unit that opposing offenses simply cannot solve. When you bring all five acts of this film breakdown together, the conclusion becomes undeniable, cutting through every remaining doubt, lazy narrative, and pre-draft critique. Austin Booker is no longer a prospective diamond in the rough or a project player waiting in the wings. The tape proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that Chicago's next pass rush guard has officially arrived. We have walked through the mechanical evidence step by step, isolating the exact biomechanical traits and technical nuances that elevate an edge rusher from ordinary talent to an unstoppable force on Sundays. From his delay-free neural get-off that leaves tackles frozen at the snap to the near-impossible ankle flexion he displays while bending around the edge, his foundational baseline operates at an elite, game-altering standard. He possesses the rare, explosive speed-to-power transition that forces veteran blockers onto their heels, paired with a calculated, lethal pass rush toolbox featuring ghost moves, shoulder dips, and violent hand combat that turns standard pass protection into pure survival mode. And, as the pursuit tracking graphics demonstrated, his impact isn't limited to obvious passing downs or third and long dropbacks. His rare lateral range and unyielding motor demolish outside zone stretch plays, obliterate perimeter screens before they can develop, and trap scrambling quarterbacks inside shrinking field boundaries. When you combine that individual dominance with the schematic terror he creates alongside Montez Sweat, opposing offensive coordinators are left staring down an impossible tactical nightmare. Offenses can no longer slide protection, double team, or chip without leaving a lethal one-on-one vacuum on the opposite side, giving Chicago a defensive front that compresses pockets, disrupts timing, and controls games entirely on their own terms. The visual evidence doesn't lie, the micro-tracking metrics don't exaggerate, and the game film provides an absolute verdict. Booker has all the physical tools, technical refinement, and relentless energy required to anchor this defense and terrorize backfields for years to come. This is the exact moment where potential transforms into reality right before our eyes, and why every Bears fan watching this breakdown should be thrilled for what is unfolding on the field. But now that we have laid out the entire film room study, analyzed every angle of his tape, and exposed the mechanics driving his ascension, the ultimate question shifts directly over to you. Looking at his explosive development, his refined pass rush arsenal, and the continuous isolated single coverage matchups he will feast on opposite Montez Sweat, where do you see his ceiling topping out this season? Is he poised to smash through double-digit sack thresholds, or will his overall pressure metrics and forced turnovers impact games in ways that go far beyond standard box score tallies? Take a look at the prompt flashing on your screen right now and join the conversation in the comment section below. Drop your exact predictions for how many sacks Austin Booker racks up this year, and tell me whether you think he locks down a Pro Bowl bid in the process. If you love deep dive, no-nonsense film room breakdowns that cut past the surface headlines and analyze real football mechanics, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like button to support the channel, and turn on notification alerts so you never miss an episode when we drop our next tape breakdown. Thank you for tuning in. Keep analyzing the film and drop those prediction numbers in the comments. Let's see who calls Booker's final stat line correctly.